There's this one thing that you can do to really harm your chances of being hired as a professional musician, and that's what this video is about. But before we get into that one thing that I want to try to help you avoid, I want to talk for a second about the most powerful asset that you have as a professional musician, and that is your reputation. Reputations take time to build. They take consistency and effort and reliability. They take time to build, but they're also easy to destroy. They're fragile, and it's easy for them to break down if we're not careful. And so, as professional musicians, we should take a lot of effort into protecting our reputation and making sure that it's well maintained and that it represents us well. But what you may not have thought of is that your reputation actually has two superpowers, not just one. The first one is obviously it can get you work, and that's probably what we think about the most. But the second is that it can get other people work too. When someone recommends a musician to me, and that musician, when I'm recommended a musician, I should say, for a gig, when a situation comes around where someone that I would normally hire can't do it, and so I need to ask for someone else to hop in. And I ask that person, hey, who would you recommend for this? And they give me a name, I trust them. I believe, because I know that musician that I always play with, that they would never send me someone who wouldn't be able to deliver the mail. And so when a friend of mine says, hey, you should use this musician, the thing that I think is, well, if they're saying that I should use them, they're obviously going to be awesome. And so I trust them. And this brings me to that mistake. The mistake is failing on a gig that you are recommended for. This one's a double killer. The first reason is because you leave a bad impression on this new person who ended up booking you on this recommendation. And they're probably not going to hire you again because second chances and third chances just aren't that common in our industry. But second, and I would say worse, is you're letting down the person who put their reputation on the line to recommend you for the gig. You got to remember, like we just talked about the power of a reputation. When you recommend someone for a gig, you're kind of lending them your reputation. Your reputation is now on the line, hoping that this person who gets recommended is going to fill the shoes that are needed to make the gig successful. And so what you do when you fail on a gig that you're recommended for is you create tension. First, you create tension between you and the person who recommended you. They put their reputation on the line and you let them down. And so now you kind of put them in the position where they're almost apologizing for recommending you. Hey, I'm so sorry. I just didn't know that they would behave that way on the gig, or they would show up, late like that, or not be prepared. I didn't know that they would do that. I'm sorry. You kind of put tension in their relationship such that the person who recommended you, they've got to do like some relationship repair. But you also put tension between the person who recommended you and the person who hired you on the recommendation. And so now not only is there tension between you and your friend or your colleague, but also there's tension between colleagues apart from you. Because now that you've caused harm on someone's gig, and they're thinking like, why would this person who I trust recommend someone who wasn't going to be professional in some way? And so you're creating like tension by not being on top of it when you show up on this gig. And so now the person who recommended you, now that they've got tension in a relationship that's important to them and they've got tension with you, maybe they're thinking, I shouldn't recommend you for a gig anymore. And that's not the way that we want people to be thinking about us, right? The other thing that it does is it kind of dilutes the strength of the recommendation of the person who recommended you. Because even then there's a certain reputation of every time that I ask, Paul, let's say Paul, every time I ask Paul for a recommendation, he sends me someone amazing and my gig always goes well. Well, it goes from that to every time I ask Paul, it goes well, except for this one time when he sent me this one guy who didn't have it together. And now all of a sudden the strength of that person's recommendation is also diluted and harmed. So if someone recommends you for a gig, you've just got to show up. You've got to nail it. You've got to do incredible work. Not only for your reputation, but also because other people are involved. And so you got to be prepared. You got to put extra effort in, 1,000% effort. If you care about the relationship with that colleague, and you care about the opportunity that you have to make a great first impression, you just got to show up and throw down and do a great job. As I look back on my career, all of my best connections have come from being recommended by someone else. That includes recommendations by musicians. That also includes recommendations to hirers, like people who want me to do concerts in their venue. And so it's just so important anytime that you're recommended for a gig that you show up and you deliver the mail and you do a great job. The last thing you want to do is to damage the reputation that you have and the reputation of a colleague in one night just because you didn't show up prepared like you should have, or didn't behave professionally like you should have, or show up on time, or just those basic important things. So if you get recommended, you gotta throw down. If you got any questions, let me know in the comments. That's the end of this video. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, y'all. Blessings.